Okay, hi everyone, welcome back. We have been talking about Litecoin for quite some time, but in the last couple of weeks, we actually didn't necessarily pay a whole lot of attention to it. And as you can see in here, unfortunately, we got a bit of a move on the downside. And if you remember, the last time that we talked about LTC, we were right in this area, and I actually had a long position open right around the $76-$77 region, and my target was somewhere around the $86-$87 area right in here. And unfortunately, I actually got out of my position at risk free. So I did not make any money, but on the other hand, I didn't really lose any money, which is definitely not that bad. Now, I want to actually start today's video by talking about what is going on potentially in LTC in the mid to long term, because for the longest time, the main idea in the long term in LTC was that we are having essentially from this point to about the highs a WXY in form of possibly a flat and a zigzag, or maybe I would say preferably actually a bit of a double zigzag structure. And the structures overall generally in Litecoin were actually quite a bit different than a whole lot of other odds. I mean, sure, if you really want to ignore the subwaves, maybe you are able to argue maybe not even from this point, maybe even from here. This is like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave impulsive structure on the upside to about the highest side in here back in 2021, about $400. But when you pay attention to the subwaves, the story is a little bit different, and I think this was actually a correction up followed by a correction down. And after our corrective movement is over, I do think in Litecoin we are going to start going up once more in a very beautiful way. But the shape of it, I don't really think that it's going to be in form of an impulse. Most likely our move up is going to be a three-wave movement in form of potentially and hopefully an ABC zigzag. Nonetheless, the long-term picture in Litecoin is bullish. However, in terms of the shape of our pattern, the structures can definitely be all for the base. For example, if you want to go according to discount as your primary case, then okay, you have to consider, if you want to argue, by the way, that the final low in LTC right in here is already in, you have to consider this move up to about this point as a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into a wave 1, followed by a correction for wave 2 to about here, or maybe here, doesn't really matter. And then we have to go up in LTC into our wave 3 and 4 and 5. This could be your primary scenario. Now, with the recent move on the downside in Litecoin, I would like to argue that there's actually a decent chance maybe this 1-2 structure is not really in play. Why is that? Because if you want to argue this is 1, this is 2, and in this phase on the upside, since we took this important high, well, okay, one very likely possibility for you to consider can be an ABC expanded flat, which looks like this. This is our initial move down into A correction for wave B, which in it we are going to take this initial high, followed by a rather strong move down into wave C, and in it we are definitely going to take the low of our wave A. And for our subwaves, you know it, ABC into A, ABC into B, followed by, excuse me, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave down into C. Now, why do I think this cannot necessarily be in play in the mid-time right around the current price action? Because, question for you, let's just hide everything. Where is our highest high in this area? It is right in here. And are you going to argue from this point we are having an expanded flat? If you want to argue that, okay, here's a challenge for you. Find me a 5-wave impulsive structure down from here to about these areas. I guarantee you, you cannot really find one. And your best shot maybe at finding some sort of a 5-wave is if you say this is 1, this is 2, and then maybe like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave down into wave 3 correction for another move down into wave 5. And in order for this structure to work as an impulse, we are basically going to go down and take this initial low, and that will basically invalidate the whole ABC expanded flat possibility. So as you can see, this 1-2 scenario, maybe it's happening, but as we go forward, odds of it happening doesn't necessarily seem to be that high. So I guess the question is, what's the story in here? Is there actually an alternative scenario in Litecoin to consider? And the answer, I would argue, is yes. And that scenario is actually a little bit maybe bearish in the short term, suggesting our move down can continue a little bit more, but overall it's actually extremely bullish. You see, in terms of Elliott waves, we can have, when it comes to corrections, something called an ABCDE, a triangle structure, and it looks like this. This is our initial move down into a correction for wave B, and in 90% of the time, our correction for wave B is actually going to end before we take this initial high, but sometimes it's actually possible for us to go up and take this high and then have our C, D, and E leg. And as you can see, as we just go forward, our range of movement is just going to get narrower and narrower. And when it comes to the sub waves, you probably know it if you are a regular viewer of the channel. We're gonna have basically ABCs for every single wave. There we go. ABC down into C, ABC up into D, and this is our final move on the downside into our E leg. And I think we may have something like this in Litecoin as our alternate case. Now, let's go on a less busy chart, maybe from trading view. There we go. Do we have all the data in here? Yes, we absolutely do. So here's the deal. I'm still going to argue that our correction in Litecoin started from this point. Now, I'm still going to say also this is ABC down, followed by also, even according to this count, this is ABC up as well. But then the story gets a little bit tricky because I'm thinking this is ABC down, followed by maybe an ABC to about this point, and this move down can be possibly in form of, where is it? There we go. 5 down into A, followed by an ABC flat into wave B, and then we are having yet another move on the downside into our ceiling. Now, at that point, on a higher degree, if this scenario is truly in play, then okay, we can argue these are the subwaves for, you know it, an A, B, C, D, E, and our move down soon is going to be over. But here is actually the negative point about this possibility. This doesn't necessarily suggest whether our correction is going to be over right away, or maybe we're just going to go a little bit lower in Litecoin. The only thing that you can actually conclude based on this scenario is this: odds are we are not going to go down and take this important low, the low of our C leg in here about, let's say, $41. Before that, we can actually go to about maybe even these areas and then have our final pass back. So that's why I think in Litecoin, yes, once more, the conclusion is the same, meaning downsides are overall limited. However, in the short term, I would like to argue that your name of the game, if you are a trader, should be tactical positions. Okay, it's very important to understand that. Why? Because a lot of the times you are seeing me talking about having from the lows a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave up Elliott wave was followed by a correction structure on the downside in order for you to be able to talk bullish with more confidence and argue the bottom is in. And we usually go on H1 or maybe even in some cases H4 time frame in order to identify such a scenario happening. And that means this whole process, which in it on net the price is not really going to go anywhere special, it's just going to take some time and it's absolutely annoying. Now, my point is this: I think we shouldn't, at least at the moment, be waiting for such a scenario to happen. If it happens, nice. But here's the deal: I think we should actually start looking for the sub waves in here. Excuse me, what just happened? Let's go around here. Let's zoom in more. There we go. We should start looking for the sub waves, and if you are a trader, maybe if you see a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave, a quick move in the next couple of days, followed by a quick move on the downside, then okay, right in here is probably going to be your long position, and you should not look for some insane targets, maybe somewhere around 150, 160, 170, okay? Just take profit the moment that we start getting this move on the upside and get out of your position. I fully understand this. You're not really going to make a lot of money, but if you're a trader, I think this might be your best option in Litecoin, since generally LTC does actually have a very well behavior chart when it comes to trading. If you're an investor, then okay, your name of the game is just simply dollar cost averaging, and any kind of move down for you should be a buy the dip opportunity. But if you are a trader, in my opinion, right now, you should start looking for tactical positions and preferably at least in the short term, I'm gonna say maybe tactical short positions. Why is that? Because at the moment, I really have my doubts about whether our move down in BTC is over or not. And in Bitcoin, if we want to go down a little bit more, then okay, what do you think in that case going to happen to LTC? Odds are we are going to get a move down as well. And for example, maybe this is even here like a correction structure on the upside, and you need to go on 5-minute time frame immediately and see what do we have in here. Do we have a 5 wave down? So far, no. This can be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you should just wait a little bit more and see, are we going to have a very slow and choppy move on the upside or not? If we get it, well, okay, this is 5 wave down, this is correction up. This, my friends, is called a tactical short position. Right in here can be a short opportunity. Your stop loss can be above the highs, and your target is going to be the next wave on the downside, maybe somewhere around these areas, and your risk reward ratio, depending on how deep this pullback is going to be, can be somewhere around 1 to 2, preferably even 1 to 3. Right now, at least in Litecoin, I think this might be the name of the game. Or generally, let's just say this, in the whole crypto space, if you are a trader, I think you should start looking for some very short-term short positions, and hopefully you are going to end up making a decent amount of money. If you do not care about any of these things, then okay, just notice in Litecoin, there are a lot of signs suggesting overall this whole move is a correction structure. And if you want to go according to discount, well, okay, this is just a consolidation in form of a triangle, meaning what? Overall, since you are a long-term investor, you should know that we are going to hopefully get yet another big phase up in order to take the all-time high for the first target, about $400. But you know what? I think we can go quite a bit higher than that. And I hope I explained everything well and you understood what is going on in LTC's chart. And until the next update, I hope you have a wonderful time. Goodbye.